Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Sandra and you're watching Christmas DIYs at the Schwowin's Nest. This first project is using some of these Dollar Tree wood trees that I found this year. I was so excited when I did find them. They're a little rough around the edges, so I'm going to take off the tags and then give them a little bit of sanding with some fine grit sandpaper just to clean them up. The trees aren't straight at the bottom, so I am going to take my little hacksaw and just cut them so they are flat across because I will be trying to stand these up. The next thing I'm going to do is start painting them around the edges, and I'm going to start by painting the bottom edge with some red chalk paint. This chalk paint is from DecoR. I get it at Michael's, and it's super thick and only requires one coat. Once I get all around the outside edge, I'm going to paint just the back of the tree. I'll do the same thing with the other two trees, except I'm just going to switch out my colors. So for this one, I'm doing sort of a mossy green color, and for the third one, I'm going to use burnt umber. Once the backs were dry, I flipped it over and I'm going to paint all three of them white on the top, but I'm not going to go over any of the edges. I'm going to make sure that I just do the very top flat portion of the trees in white. And they took a couple of coats to cover because I wanted the white to be nice and crisp. I've got a garland tie from the Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of 12, and I'm going to just give it a little bit of a haircut. I don't like it when the needles are that long, especially when I'm trying to create something in miniature form. It just looks a lot nicer when they're cut down. I'm going to bend part of this garland into a circle because I want to create a little miniature wreath for on top of one of the trees. So once I get the size that I like, I'm just going to take my snips and cut the rest off. Before I can start attaching things to my trees, I want to distress them. I'm using one of these wide little chip brushes, and I've got it dipped in some black paint, and I'm basically just dry brushing a little bit around the edges of the tree. I'm just coming in from the outside to make sure that I don't get anything on the natural wood part. Then I'm going to drag the chip brush very lightly across the tree, going in a vertical fashion as you see me doing here. And again, very lightly. I don't want any really dark lines on this. I just want it very lightly distressed. And I'm going to do this for all three of the trees. Using hot glue, I'm going to glue the two ends of the little mini wreath together and just hold them until the glue sets. I did end up making it a touch tinier than originally planned because I wanted it to not look too oversized on this little mini tree. I also created a simple little shoestring bow from some red and white gingham ribbon that also came from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue that right on top of the little wreath. I'm going to hot glue the wreath right on top of the first Christmas tree, and this is the one with the red background. For the brown tree, I've got some little mini hemlock pine cones that I picked up at my cottage last year, and I had a bunch left over. I'm just putting them in sort of a wreath arrangement, and I'm going to hot glue them into place. I know the Dollar Tree carries some mini pine cones, and sometimes you can find some little ones like this in the pack. But if you're looking specifically for these teeny tiny ones, I do have a link for hemlock pine cones down in my description box, but I can't guarantee that they're still available. I wanted to give this little pine cone wreath a gingham bow as well, and I wanted to use black and white, but I didn't have any of the real thin stuff. So I'm just using my hot glue gun and I'm taking the thicker stuff. I think it's about an inch or 3/4 of an inch wide, and I'm just gluing it in half. And then I'll make a little shoestring bow for this wreath too. The tree with the green background is going to get a little red pipberry wreath. I'm going to start by just doing one wreath circle, and then I'm going to add some additional pip berries on the outside of the circle just to make it look a little bit more substantial. This one's going to get a chenille stem bow in the color of green, and I think this trio turned out really cute. Now, the reason I cut them flat is because I have this little piece of rustic pallet wood that I want to stand them on, but I want the center one to be a little bit taller. So I'm just using this tumbling tower block and I'm hot gluing it to the back of the wood piece, and that will elevate the middle tree. Before I add the trees, I wanted to get this plank and that tumbling tower block the same color. So I'm using a wash of water and burnt umber acrylic paint. I'm just going to brush it on and the palette wood will soak it up really nicely. I had to give the little tumbling tower block a couple of coats and actually even just dry brush a little bit of the burnt umber directly from the jar. So remember when I said at the beginning of this project that things are going to evolve? This is what I meant. I didn't like the natural wood look. Now that I had stained the plank that they're going to sit on, I wanted everything to look really put together. So I'm just taking a very small brush and some of the same stain that I used on the wood plank, and I'm just going to very gently and carefully go around all of the natural wood pieces of the trees. Everything's dry, so now I can start assembling my little project. I'm using hot glue and I'm just going to be pressing each of the little trees down onto the wood plank. This is the green one that has the cute little pipberry wreath, and I thought that would be a good one to have in the center because it has a chenille stem and the other two have gingham ribbon bows. The other two trees are going to go on the plank itself, and I just got them sticking out a little bit, about a half an inch past the end of the wood plank and sort of in the middle of the wood plank. So there's a little bit of a lip in front of them. I'm going to add some little pine sprigs and some more pine cones and really dress up this little guy so he looks absolutely adorable. I even added a couple of red pipberries just to bring everything together. I think this turned out really sweet. Thank you so much to my current subscribers. I really love you guys. You have helped me grow from nothing to something, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'd love for you to stick around by hitting that red subscribe button too. Hi there. Welcome to Christmas at the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's video is episode 2 of my DIY ideas from subscribers, and my first project is about angels. So this is for Alma. If you're watching Alma, I'll give you some details later on how to get in touch if you'd like me to send this to you. I'm taking one of these wood panels and I like to flip them around because then you get a nice frame. You can see that I did something with this last year. It didn't fly, so I'm just going to redo it. I'm going to go ahead and give this a couple of coats of my white chalk paint. I'm going to do the full frame around the edges and on the inside. I'm not going to worry about schmutzing the inside of the frame itself because I'll be covering that up in a minute. I'm going a little outside my comfort zone and I'm working with some of this cardstock that has a little bit of a gold texture to it. That's not really something that I use in my home, but I wanted to create a really sweet angel with gold wings. So I thought this scrapbook paper would be the perfect complement as the background. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out into a 5 by 7 size because that's what I need for inside the frame. I went to my Cricut Design Space app and I used some shapes to create a halo, her little head, and her body. And for the wings, I used a wing set that came in the Cricut Design Space app. So this will be available as a free printable on my website. And if you're not sure how to do that, there are instructions down in my description box. The wings will go on first, and I'm just going to try and center them as best I can, and then I'll just peel off the transfer tape. Then with her halo and the head and the body, I didn't need to use transfer tape because the vinyl was thick enough that I could just peel it off and put it on just like a sticker. For the halo, I did need to use the transfer tape, and before I stick it down, I'm actually going to trim it because I only want the halo kind of going on the top of her head. I don't want it covering her forehead, so I'm just going to be doing some trimming to make sure that the halo fits properly where I want it. For the angel's eyes, I didn't want to make anything too cartoony looking, so I just am doing some little closed eyelids with a little bit of lashes in each corner, and I think that just makes it look super sweet. These are little wood banner pieces that I picked up at Dollarama, and I'm going to be cutting off the top edge because I don't need those little circles. So I'm just using my miter shears and just measuring them all in the same length and then just trimming them up. Keeping with the white and gold theme, I wanted to create these banners with a gold touch, and I don't have any gold paint. I have silver paint, but not gold. So I decided just to use this gold permanent marker that I picked up at the dollar store, and I'm just going to color them all in. So all three of them will get a coat of this. Once they were dry, I took a white oil-based paint marker from Craftsmart, and I'm just going to freehand the letters JOY, which will of course spell the word joy. So I'm going to go over them a couple of times to make sure they're nice and dark with the color, and then I'm going to give them a little bit of some shadowing. I like to draw some shadows on my letters, usually on the left-hand side, just to give them a little bit more dimension and character. You can see here that I'm just doing it very simply, marking it on the left side. I'm going to leave the O the way it is, and then for the J, just put a little bit down like that. And it just gives them a little bit more oomph. So now the frame is completely dry. I'm taking my sanding sponge here and I'm going over the edges. I want to bring up some of that brown that was underneath. And I'm just going to go all the way around the edges, including the inside frame and then also the corners. I'm going to be giving them a little bit more of a roughness, as you can see here. And I'm also going to do that on the sides. To apply the paper to the frame, I'm just using a glue stick and I'm really just going to be going around the edges because there's no need to put anything on the inside. As long as your edges are really nice and covered with glue, you'll be able to get it on there and it'll stick fine. Using some hot glue, I'm going to glue the little banner sign down on the bottom of the frame. This frame is going to be hanging, so you won't be able to stand it up because of the little banner pieces sticking out. I'm going to start in the center and make sure I put the O right smack in the center of the frame, and then I'll evenly space out the J and the Y. To balance the letters down at the bottom, I want to put something a little bit Christmassy on the top. Not too much. So I'm taking this little branch that came off of a garland. I don't like these branches when they're so long. So I always take my scissors and I trim it down. It really makes it look more high end and not so inexpensive or cheap looking. So you can do that to any of your greenery and just make it look so much better. Using my little snips here, I'm going to just trim these garland pieces in half. At the top of the sign, I'm going to hot glue them to make a tiny little swag. So one a little bit angled down like you see here, and then I'll do the next one the same way on the other side. And then I'm going to add the two smaller ones on top, going in the same direction with just a little bit of variation on the angle. I just love using pip berries in my holiday and seasonal decor, and these are little white ones that have a few different textures on them. I'm going to go ahead and trim them fairly short. I don't want any of that green leaf there. That looks really cheap. And then I'm going to just hot glue them right on top of the greenery, two going in the same direction of the greenery, and then two facing down towards the angel. And then I decided to embellish her skirt with a few of the balls, and I also put 3 around her neck. Now, just so you know, I turned the camera off every time I was putting these little glittery balls on, and turned the camera back on when I was cleaning up. So I am not perfect when I'm doing my videos. I do tend to miss some stuff. So sorry about that, but I think you get the idea of how she looks. Seeing as I'm hoping that I'll be able to send this to Alma, I wanted to make the back look pretty as well. So I just took another piece of this gold striped cardstock, and I'm just going to hot glue it around the edges and then trim off the excess. The last thing I'll do then is add a sawtooth hanger, and this sign is ready to go. I really think she turned out cute.
For this project, I'm using some of these fence boards that were little scrap pieces. I cut them in half and then I created the angles on the top to make them look like picket fences. I'm using hot glue to put these together, and at first I thought I might have to use some screws or nails to help them stay together, but the hot glue is Gorilla Construction wood glue, and they stuck together like the Dickens. I made a mistake on one of the projects and had to use a chisel and a hammer to get it apart, so I definitely would recommend using some of the Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks if you ever find them. So I've got these 3 pieces glued together, and now I'm going to create a little box in the front. The first thing I'm going to do is just put the bottom piece, and I'm going to glue that to the very bottom of these 3 picket fences. So I'm just using, again, the hot glue. I'm going to put it together, and then I'm going to add a couple of sides and a front. Now the front ends up being a little bit too low, but I was okay with that. It just looked a little rustic. If you're really fussy about things like that, then you could go ahead and do things a little differently. But I was happy with how these turned out. I made 2 of these little picket fence boxes along with all of the other projects. I did make 2 of each, and you'll see that at the end when I show you how I decorated them. I gave both of these little boxes 2 coats of white latex paint, just regular paint that you would use on your walls in your house. Then I used my Cricut Joy to cut out the word Merry, and in the other one, I'm going to do the word Joy. For this one, I added a few holly leaves, which also I cut out with my Cricut. And now I'm just going to take a brush and some black paint and just distress the edges a little bit all the way around, just to make it look a little bit more rustic. Once I was done with the edges, I just took my brush and whatever paint was left on it and dragged it across all of the surfaces in the same direction as the wood grain, just to give it even more of a distressed look. I think these little boxes are perfect to add a little bit of Christmas cheer into your home. You could use them just with a little bit of greenery or maybe some candles. I think they would look great on a counter or a hot cocoa bar with some hot chocolate packets, some tea, and maybe even some coffee pods. Next, I used some deck boards. They're much wider and much thicker than the fence boards, so I decided to make some houses out of these. I cut the angle at the top, and then I found two other little pieces of scrap wood that I measured to fit to make a roof. I also cut those on an angle so you'd see that little angle piece on the end of the roof towards the bottom. These do stand up on their own, but I decided to add a base to them because probably what I'm going to do when I get home and I have more access to all of my Christmas craft supplies, I'll probably add a few little more things down at the bottom, maybe some greenery and some berries. But for now, I'm just going to leave them a little bit more plain. I'm going to do the body of the house in white, and then I'm going to do the base in black and the roof in a pioneer red. It's sort of a rustic red color. It's not a true Christmas red, but I think for these pieces, it turns out perfect. For this house, I found a pre-made graphic on Cricut Design Space, and I cut it out with my Cricut Joy, and now I'm just going to weed out all the pieces. I use transfer tape that I get from the dollar stores. It works just as good, if not better, than the Cricut or the name brand transfer tape. And I really like using it. It's super cheap. And because it has a good amount of sticky, not too much, I can use it over and over again. So I will probably use this same piece of transfer tape about 3 times today. I'm going to take some of this ribbon, which is burlap, and it has a bit of a black thread through it. I thought this would be a really nice embellishment on this house. I'm just going to glue it right down at the bottom to cover up any of my painting mistakes. I also did a Cricut design on this one, and I just used one of their pre-imaged Christmas trees, but I took a star and the words Merry Christmas and I sliced them out, and that created a stenciled look. On this house, I decided to use some regular jute twine. I wrapped it around the bottom portion of the sign about 4 or 5 times, making sure that it was nice and flat and they were all stacked on top of each other. Now I've moved up about a good 3/4 of an inch or so, and I'm going to do the same thing, just wrap it around. Now I'm going to add some black and white gingham to the center portion in between the jute twine, and then make a really cute bow and put that right in the center as well. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know I'm not really a bow fan, but lately I've been liking how they look, especially when you make them with gingham ribbon. I'm still not a fan of really big bows and ribbons and things, so you won't see me make too much of that, but I really love how this one turned out. Since I learned how to make a two-fingered bow, I am obsessed with them. They are really super easy to do, and for this one, I'm going to make it a 3-loop bow instead of a 2-loop bow. And if you're interested in learning how to make a two-finger bow like this, I will have a tutorial linked down in my description box, so you can go check that out, and it'll be a step-by-step tutorial of how to make this. For the final touch, I'm going to add this little sparkly white styrofoam ball. It just came off of a garland and I think it adds the perfect finish. For these, I decided to make some larger tags. So I just took the deck boards and I cut off some angles at the top and then glued them onto a base, painted the tag white and the base black. I'm now taking some designs from Cricut Design Space. This one I actually created myself, so I'll definitely have that available for you as a free printable on my website. To decorate this tag, I'm going to put 2 rows of this red and white gingham ribbon on, and then I'm going to use some pip berries that I pulled off of a garland. They are a brown stem, and I thought that would really blend in with my theme for today with all of these rustic projects. On the second tag, I've got this design. Again, this one will be available as a free printable on my website. That link is down in my description box. I used the gingham ribbon again and glued it onto the sign. What I'm going to do now is add a smaller piece and make that one stand up and down and have them joined together in the corner. So this looks more like a gift. I'm making another two-fingered bow to put right in the corner. Then I added another one of those sweet little styrofoam balls that I have from the garland, and this project is done too. Here's a look at how all four of these pieces turned out. I'm really happy with what embellishments I put on them. I think it's just enough for a simple rustic holiday theme. My final wood pieces today are a couple of cutting boards. I cut this one out of a deck board and I sanded everything down. You can see all the really nice lines and some cracks, and I think these are going to make beautiful boards to display for the holidays. I did a couple of different styles. This one is a shorter one and it has sort of a concave kind of handle. The other one is really long and it has more of a rounded handle. This is the taller board with the more rounded handle. And for this one, I'm putting on a Christmas tree and Merry and Bright, again, using my Cricut Joy. And I will have as many of these available as free printables for you. I'm using red and white gingham ribbon again, but this one's a little different. It's a little narrower and the pattern's a little larger. This one comes from the Dollar Tree. Every once in a while, I get lucky and I find the ribbon that I'm looking for at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to wrap this around a couple of times on the bottom and on the top. And then after I was done, or at least I thought I was done, I just found that it needed a little bit of something extra. So I decided to paint the portion that was white underneath this ribbon right here black. And I really think that upped the look of this piece. And I think it's really, really pretty. I also added a triple loop bow to the top of this one and added one of those little foam balls from the vines as well. Since painting the bottom portion of this board black was an afterthought, I already had the ribbon glued on. So I used a piece of masking tape to completely cover the ribbon so I wouldn't schmutz on it. But I also left a little bit of a white stripe in between the ribbon and the black paint. With the second board, I decided to take the jute twine again, just tie it in a knot in the back and then wrap it around a whole bunch of times to just make it look really nice and full. I love these white pip berries in this garland, so I decided to incorporate that into this board. I thought it would go really well since the pip berry vine is brown. I'm just going to fold some of them and tuck them right underneath the twine, and then I just used a little bit of hot glue to hold them in place. I didn't like them hanging straight down, so I did give them a little bit of a curl just using my Cricut weeding tool, and that just helped to make it a little bit more festive. To embellish this one a little bit more, I made a 3-loop bow using the 2-finger method, just using some of this black and white gingham ribbon from Dollar Tree. I also added a little sponge ball to the center of the bow. The final touch for this one was adding a little bit of that burlap with the black threading through it to the bottom, and this one is finished. I really love how these boards turned out. I hope you enjoyed this video and it wasn't too early to start my Christmas DIYs. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up because that really gets me noticed more on YouTube and helps my channel grow. Don't forget about the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything else I have to share. Bye for now.